When looking at everything that South Carolina's running back room has to offer this upcoming season, I think it's fair to say that this is the deepest this room has been in a very long time.
You are Locked On Gamecocks, your daily podcast on the South Carolina Gamecocks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, Gamecock Nation, and welcome back to the Locked On Gamecocks podcast. I am Andrew Lyon, the host of this podcast, and you can also find my written work over on Gamecock Digest on Fan Nation. Thank y'all so much for making the Locked On Gamecocks podcast your first listen or watch for your team every day. We are free and available both on YouTube and wherever you get your audio podcasts daily. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Got a lot we're going to touch on this Wednesday edition of the Locked On Gamecocks podcast. We're going to talk about where Mark Kingston and South Carolina's baseball team is currently at this point in time. What is one area where we can be optimistic and another area where maybe we need to be a little bit concerned? We'll also talk about why Spencer Rattler has a golden opportunity in front of him when he goes to the NFL Combine this upcoming weekend. But before we dive into all of that, I want to talk about South Carolina's running back room and specifically how deep this group is heading into 2024. Because when you look at the talent, the versatile skill sets, and the overall experience that this room possesses, I think it's fair to say that this is the deepest group that this program has seen in a very long time. If you want me to be specific, I think it's the deepest this room has been since 2000, the deepest it's been in the entire 21st century. Now, admittedly, I'm not old enough to compare this particular group to several running back groups that may have been really good in the early to mid 2000s, heck, even the late 2000s. So instead of trying to compare this room to running back rooms of years past, I'm going to just try to lay out the case for why this group is the deepest that we've seen since 2000. So let's go over, first of all, the proven production that this group has, because there's a lot to like in terms of what this group has actually done on the football field throughout their respective careers. This group of running backs to this point has accumulated 5,504 total rushing yards, 44 rushing touchdowns, 1,117 receiving yards, and 8 receiving touchdowns. You want to add all of that up? That equates to 6,621 total yards and 52 total touchdowns. So, whether it has been on the ground, in the air, simply running for a lot of yards, or scoring touchdowns, this entire group, for the most part, has done it all throughout their college careers. Also, this group possesses two very, very good players, two accomplished players in terms of accolades. A first-team all-conference back in Raheim Sanders, along with an FCS freshman All-American running back in Jawarn Howell, who's, by the way, just coming off of his freshman campaign. The other thing to like about this group is the overall experience that it possesses. You've got a fifth-year senior and Oscar Adaway III out of North Texas. You've got two true seniors in Raheim Sanders from Arkansas and, of course, Juju McDowell. And you've also got two true sophomores in Jawarn Howell and Dontavius Braswell, and a true freshman in Matthew Fuller. So you could also mention how it is kind of split in terms of the experience. You've got a good mixture of older, seasoned veterans, guys that have been around the block a few times in the college game, and some other guys that, you know, are still kind of getting their feet wet, or maybe haven't even taken a snap if you're in Matthew Fuller's shoes. Between all of those guys, they have played 113 total games at the college level. You're not going to find very many rooms that have got that kind of experience back there. And then when we talk about the versatility that this room possesses, this might be where the group is most impressive. Raheim Sanders, we'll start off with him. He is basically the closest thing to a do-it-all back in this room. He's a guy that can both run and catch the football efficiently, and he can also make guys miss in open space. He might not be necessarily the best blocker for his quarterback based on what Pro Football Focus says about his career to this point, but Rocket is going to affect the game in many ways on the offensive side of the ball, which is what makes him so dangerous when he's out there on the field. You look at Oscar Adaway III, likely the number 2 back in this room in 2024. He is your traditional between the tackles type of back. Essentially, he is a north-south back who is going to run in the box, basically be used on a lot of inside runs, and he uses ball carrier vision instead of, incredible agility or maybe explosiveness to get more yardage. It's nothing really special, but he gets the job done when he is out there. You got Jawarn Howell, who is a bit of a unicorn in terms of some of his strengths athletically and also his size. He is a bigger and lankier running back, but he also has a little bit of speed to him. Essentially, I think he's a bit of a bigger version of a Lavassier Carroll, who was on this South Carolina football team just a couple years back before, unfortunately, he had to medically retire. Matthew Fuller, in my opinion, he's the same kind of back as a Jawarn Howell, but he's a bit shorter and stockier when you look at his frame. Juju McDowell, he's basically Mr. Make You Miss. He is a guy that maybe in terms of overall sheer speed, he's not going to win every single foot race. He can win some, but where he makes his money's worth when he's out there on the field is trying to make guys miss in open space because of how small he is, comparatively speaking, how shifty he is, the agility that he has. He's got a nice little juke move. He's got a spin move that he'll use from time to time as well. That is where Juju McDowell thrives the most, especially catching the football out in the flat. And then you got Dontavius Braswell. He is essentially your track speed guy. I'm faster than every single one of you, and if I get past you, you're not going to catch me. He can catch the football as well, and he also did show in the Kentucky game in 2023 that he can also make big-time clutch blocks when his quarterback needs them the most. So, you look at the production, you look at the experience, and you look at all the different things that each of these running backs bring to this room. I don't think there is a question. This is the deepest room that South Carolina has had in a very long time. Whether you want to say a decade, 2 decades plus since the beginning of the 21st century, I think this room is deeper than all the ones that we have seen over the past 25 years without a question. If you want to argue that certain running backs in the past maybe are more talented than the majority of these guys, I'm definitely willing to listen to that. But in terms of what all of these guys have done and could do over the next several years, I mean, this room, in my opinion, goes 5 or 6 guys deep. In terms of, can I put you out there and can I trust you to do something with the football here? You can thank the transfer portal era for the fact that we can say that now about South Carolina's running back room. Now, obviously, South Carolina, with all those running backs that they have, they're likely going to need to lean on those guys a good bit more in 2024 because of the fact that they have lost Spencer Rattler, who is now preparing himself for the 2024 NFL Draft. And while Rattler has seen his stock rise already a good bit this offseason, he's going to have another chance to rise up those draft boards, those mock draft boards, even further when he gets to the Combine in Indianapolis. I'll explain why in just a couple moments right here on Locked On Gamecocks. Today's show is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime is the fastest and easiest way to buy tickets for all the different events that you might want to go check out, whether it's a sporting event, maybe a music event, comedy, theater, and more. South Carolina's men's basketball team, sure, they're playing later tonight against the Texas A&M Aggies, but they've also got a really big home game coming up this coming Saturday when they take on the Florida Gators. Florida's ranked 24th in the country right now, and quite frankly, South Carolina's battling Florida when it comes to maybe the seed line they're going to be on for the NCAA tournament in March, which makes this game even bigger. The cheapest upper bowl ticket for this game is $29, and the cheapest lower bowl ticket is $44, so still pretty reasonably priced for how big this matchup is going to be this coming weekend. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Welcome back to this Wednesday edition of the Locked On Gamecocks podcast, where we cover your South Carolina Gamecocks every single day. And as always, a really big thank you to each and every one of you everydayers who make the Locked On Gamecocks podcast your first listen wherever you get your audio podcasts daily, or your first watch on YouTube. Spencer Rattler has already created a little bit of buzz in the NFL scouting community, as a lot more people are starting to wake up to what South Carolina football fans have already known for a very long time, and that is the fact that Spencer Rattler, quite frankly, right now is being severely overlooked. And when it comes to everything that he offers in terms of the experiences that he's had, the skill set that he possesses, Spencer Rattler is one of the better quarterback options in the 2024 NFL draft class. And Rattler is going to take another chance this coming weekend to prove to scouts, coaches, and front office personnel that he is the guy that they need to go after, because it was reported by Bleacher Report's Jordan Schultz on Monday morning that Spencer Rattler will indeed be going through throwing drills at the NFL Combine. I think that obviously this is a very good decision by Spencer. Again, right now, a lot of people have him as, say, a third-round pick, fourth-round pick. Some people have him as a second-round pick, but you don't see very many people having him going on day one or, say, early day two. So Spencer, clearly, in terms of trying to get himself a better rookie deal and maybe garner some more attention for himself, he is going to try to go out there and put on a show for everybody that's going to be in attendance up in Indianapolis. And the thing about the Combine this weekend is, and we see this, typically every single year with these quarterbacks, there will be a few guys that are sort of the highest ranked prospects on these mock draft boards that are not going to be throwing. Southern Cal's Caleb Williams will not be going through any drills. North Carolina's Drake May will not be going through any drills, along with LSU's Jaden Daniels. None of those guys are going to work out at the Combine. Now, Michael Penix from Washington and Bo Nix from Oregon, those two guys will be going through all of the workouts, along with Spencer Rattler. So, in terms of the opportunity that Spencer Rattler has, it's not just the fact that he's going to be working out and it's just another chance to get out in front of all of these guys. It's the fact that Spencer Rattler, much like the Reese's Senior Bowl, is going to have a chance to make sure that he looks like the best quarterback out of all of these guys that he is going up against. Again, sure, he's not going to get to throw against a Caleb Williams, Drake May, or Jaden Daniels, but I think that we can all still agree, in terms of pure arm talent, Spencer Rattler can match up with anybody in this draft class. Sure, he might not have the gaudy numbers over his entire career that maybe a Drake May has, maybe that a Caleb Williams has in terms of his scrambling ability. He does not have a Heisman Trophy that he can point to like a Jaden Daniels can. But Spencer Rattler has got a very intriguing combination. He's got that quick release. He can throw the ball from multiple different arm angles outside the pocket. He has now proven also that he can operate within structure, that he can navigate pressure within the pocket. He has played in multiple pro-style offenses. He was coached last season by a former longtime NFL offensive coordinator and quarterback coach in Dow Loggins. Spencer Rattler checks off pretty much every single box that these scouts, these coaches, and the front office personnel, when it comes to interviews, are going to have when they are chatting with him or watching him on the field go through all of these drills. And I know that some people are going to say that there's a little bias behind what I'm about to say here, but I really think that Spencer Rattler might be the best quarterback in this draft. I think that there are issues you can point to with Drake May. I think there are issues that you can point to with Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels, all of these guys. In essence, I don't think there's necessarily this slam dunk quarterback. I think there's a lot of solid quarterbacks in this draft class, but I don't think there's just that one guy that's maybe like a Peyton Manning, where it's like, he has got to be picked first or second overall. The media would tell you that there is that guy, and it's Caleb Williams. But you're banking on a lot going a certain way for him to pan out and be that kind of franchise quarterback. I think Spencer Rattler, if anybody's got a chance to be that guy out of this draft class, it is him. And so, him going through this combine, once again, facing off against guys like Michael Penix and Bo Nix, while not having to deal with Caleb Williams, Drake May, and Jane Daniels, he's once again going to have another chance to create a lot of dialogue about how, hey, you guys probably should not be overlooking number 7 from South Carolina. If you're thinking about drafting a different quarterbacks in that group, say like a Michael Pratt from a Tulane, or maybe a Michael Penix from Washington, you might want to think twice about that. And you might want to think a little bit more about getting Spencer Rattler. He's got a chance to do that once again. He already did that somewhat in Mobile at the Reese's Senior Bowl through practices and the game itself. Now he's got a chance to do it again when he goes up to Indianapolis for basically what is going to be a massive one-day interview opportunity with a lot of these teams later on this week. So, big opportunity for Spencer Rattler, and of course, wish him all the best of luck when his combine workout rolls around. Now, South Carolina's baseball team, they got past another mid-major opponent last night in Gardner-Webb. We're not going to talk about that game because obviously nobody's going to be really interested to discuss that game in full on this show, but we are going to talk about how this team looks so far. Because the team, sure, it is, I believe now 8-1 on the season. They're 2.5 weeks into the regular season. So where should we feel the most optimistic about this team, and what is one area where maybe it's time to start getting a little bit concerned? We'll discuss all that in just a couple moments right here on Locked On Gamecocks. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, as new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. LeBron James is 75 points away from scoring his 40,000th career regular season point. A big, big accomplishment for the all-time leading scorer. Now, FanDuel currently has a specialty bet going on right now where you can bet on how LeBron is going to score his 40,000th career regular season point. Layup is listed at plus 175. A 3-point field goal is listed at plus 300. Others listed at plus 320. A free throw is listed at plus 500. And surprisingly, a dunk is listed at plus 550. LeBron obviously has always been known as a slasher, but he's also shooting quite well from 3 this year. So there's a lot of good options here where you can make some money back on your bet. You want to look at that specialty bet or any other bets that they've got going on with the NBA right now? Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Welcome back to today's edition of the Locked On Gamecocks podcast, where we cover your team every single day in just 30 minutes. Let's talk a little bit of baseball, as Mark Kingston, the South Carolina Gamecocks, they're doing quite well on the diamond so far this season. They are currently 8-1. They just defeated the Gardner-Webb Bulldogs. I believe it was 7-1 on Tuesday night. It took them a while to get going offensively. For the most part, it was a pretty convincing win for South Carolina. And now they're just a couple days away from their rivalry series against the Clemson Tigers. And we'll definitely be sure to dive into that a lot more when we get to our Friday show this week. But for today's show, I want to more so talk about the team itself and how it's performed. and more specifically, one area where fans should be optimistic and another area where maybe fans should be getting a bit more concerned at this point in non-conference play. So let's talk about the area where you should be most optimistic. And we've got to talk about pitching. And it's kind of funny how this season has played out. It's kind of played out in a similar tone to how last year played out in non-conference play, because going to last season, the biggest question mark for the team was not pitching at all. Most people were saying that pitching's going to be just fine. The question marks revolved around the batting lineup, and South Carolina answered that emphatically in the first couple weeks of play. This season, it was flip-flopped. It was the batting lineup that no one really had any concerns about, and people were more so wondering, how's the pitching staff going to look? And so far, the pitching staff has looked phenomenal when they've been out there on the mound. Through 9 games this season, 11 pitchers have thrown 3 or more innings, and only 3 of them have given up more than 1 earned run. That is remarkable consistency across the board. It's not just, say, 3, 4, or 5 guys that are leading the charge. You have got starters, you have got bullpen guys that maybe will go in the game in the very middle, the 5th, 6th inning, and you've also got guys that go into the very end, the 8th or 9th, that are pitching quite well at the same time. That is a great sign for this staff. And if you're looking for a particular group that really has done well to this point this season, I have to give it to the mid-game relievers so far. Guys like Ty Good, Matthew Becker, Tyler Pitzer, Tyler Dean, and Joey Wittig. Those guys have done a really, really good job. In particular, Ty Good. They have just looked phenomenal. They have not been faced very much against the easier competition that they've faced so far, admittedly. But they've gone out there and they've taken care of business, and that is what you want to see from these guys at this point in the season. So, pitching, look, I'm not going to go so far as to say it's no longer a question mark. I do feel like that the starting rotation outside of Eli Jones could be a bit more consistent. Dylan Eskew was a bit concerning how much he fell off a cliff in his last start. And Roman Kimball, look, give the guy a ton of props. It's a great comeback story, and obviously everybody's going to be pulling for him to have a fantastic season with South Carolina in 2024, but we've yet to see Kimball have to go deep into a game, or maybe have to basically just win a pitcher's duel. So, be interesting to see how he handles those situations when they arrive over the next few weeks. With that bearing in mind, let's talk about the facet of this team that is concerning right now. The most concerning. And I would actually say right now it deals with the offense, and more particularly the struggles that they're having in manufacturing runs via hitting the baseball in the field. Now, I know that some people are not going to be thrilled with me talking about this, because a lot of people are going to sit there and say, well, this batting lineup that you're kind of disparaging right now has drawn 76 walks to this point, which, by the way, leads all of Division I baseball. So, yes, that is true. This group so far, they are drawing a lot of free passes. But here's what I would say in terms of pushing back on that notion. Part of it is this batting lineup having good plate discipline. The other part of the equation, though, that we have to acknowledge is this team has not faced very good pitchers so far this year. They have played Miami of Ohio. They have played Winthrop. They have played Queen's University of Charlotte. They have played Belmont. And they have played Gardner-Webb. Now, Belmont and Gardner-Webb, I would say in particular, I don't think that those are bad squads. I think that they are solid baseball teams that will do some good things this year. But still, they don't have pitching staffs that scare you exactly. And yet South Carolina, they're having to lean heavily on getting free passes to generate a lot of offense so far. And that's backed up by the fact that the Gamecocks have only hit 11 homers as a team through 9 games this season. And that's not even accounting the fact that 6 of those 11 homers have been hit by either Ethan Petrie or Cole Messina. Just 2 guys in your starting lineup. Everybody else on the team either has no home runs or they have 1 on the season, and that is it. Now, I will admit, last weekend against Belmont, the weather had a big impact on that series. There were multiple hits from Gavin Casas and Cole Messina that wound up being very loud flyouts that probably should have left the ballpark under usual circumstances if the wind was not blowing in. I absolutely acknowledge that. But even accounting for that, this team, they're having to score a lot via mistakes from their opponents. As a matter of fact, 21 of the Gamecocks' 84 runs that they've scored this season, exactly 25%, have been scored via a walk, an error from the opposing team, a hit by pitch, or a wild pitch. And that does not include situations, by the way, where several free passes were issued one way or another, and then somebody got a base hit with, say, 2 runners on base, or even the bases loaded, and it goes down as 2 runs scored via a hit. But probably would have not had that situation unless the opposing pitcher had not walked 2 or 3 guys in a row. The Gamecocks are going to face a different animal this weekend in the Clemson Tigers. Look, I get it. Clemson has not exactly looked pretty themselves in terms of their on-field play so far this season. They're the same team that lost a game 18-1 last weekend to Kennesaw State, of all people. But this is still a good team. There is a reason why they are ranked. There's a reason why they're ranked 10th in the country. Clemson's got some legit players on their squad, and it'll be the first team all season that South Carolina's faced where they're going to see some major league type stuff from a pitching staff. I'm very curious to see how they handle that. Are they going to do a good job of actually putting the ball in play and scoring runs in that regard? Or is this batting lineup, which was supposed to be so deep and the best part of this team going into the season, are they going to have to rely on a lot of mistakes from the opposing pitching staff? It's okay to have to lean on that every so often, but at some point, you got to generate offense through what you are doing specifically at the plate. And I don't think we've seen enough of that so far collectively from this baseball team. So we'll see if that changes when they play the Clemson Tigers this upcoming weekend. With that being said, that's going to do it for today's edition of the Locked On Gamecocks podcast. I hope that y'all thoroughly enjoyed today's show. As always, give me your thoughts on South Carolina's running back room. Do you think this is the deepest running back room that this team has had in a very long time? What are your thoughts on Spencer Rattler and the opportunity that he's going to have to impress scouts even further at the NFL Combine this coming weekend? And lastly, what area are you most optimistic about, and what area are you most concerned about with the Gamecocks baseball team so far this season? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments section if you watched today's show on YouTube, or you can shoot me a direct message on X at @ALion_SC if you listen to today's show on an audio podcast app. As always, thank y'all so much for tuning in. Have a great rest of your Wednesday, and I'll be sure to catch y'all on the next show of the Locked On Gamecocks podcast.